What's up, everybody? This is Andrew Gillum. Putting some lotion on my hands because my mama talking to me about not having lotion hands. Anyway, y'all, listen real quick. This is coincidentally spring break for the kids. I am not at home. Spring break, we try to make our rounds, visit family, and find other things to distract us and the kids for a couple of days. Hats off to teachers who do this year in, year out, month, week, day after day, all that good stuff. Anyway, so wherever you are, I hope you're doing well. This is me coming to you, talking a little bit about this solo pod that I'm doing. We are, how do you say, Angela and I think Tiffany soon will be sort of branching off to take various elements of either news of the day or issues we want to, brief and educate people on, as well as strategies for how we make it through, frankly, the trying days wherein we find ourselves. I have made the choice, at least for the first many of my solo pods, to try to deepen into a question that we keep getting pretty regularly on the main show of Native Land Pod, around what do we do the moment that we're in, the fights that we're having, the apparent tyranny that goes unchecked at the national level, what we're dealing with in our states and in our cities. And I really I like the question, but I hate the question because it just loads up so much on you when you think, well, what do I do? What is the thing? People get, pressured and feel really not up to the task, that they're not the right people to do the thing that it is that needs to be done. And I just wanted to take a historical example of people getting together and organizing a thing and it becoming something, bigger, I think, than their initial ambitions. And the example I'd like to use for on the aftermath of this past weekend's 60th remembrance of Bloody Sunday, the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I want to use the Montgomery bus boycotts as sort of a background, and we know it, of course, as the big transformational Montgomery bus boycotts today. But back then, if we were to trace back to, the work of Rosa Parks in 1955 when she made her refusal, it's important to note that there were those who had been arrested, frankly, prior to Rosa Parks's refusal. Claudette Colvin comes to mind, the 15-year-old who, less than a year prior to Rosa Parks's refusal, also refused to get up and give her seat away in the Negro section of the bus where she had paid her fare to be able to sit. But we thank all of those who came before. But I just wanted to provide a little bit of context for how this very local action kind of ballooned, and relate that to this big question of what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And it being almost paralyzing to think about. Well, some of you may know, but there was a little known group at the time called the Neighborhood Improvement, the Montgomery that Dr. King would eventually come to lead. But prior Dr. King leading it, it had the name, it had the name of the Negro Council, local Negro Council, which the name was changed because it was in such close semblance to the White Council, which was a racist organization that, in order for the framing to go right, they made the name change. Nonetheless, the Neighborhood Improvement Association there at Montgomery pre-existed the work done around the bus boycotts. They were formed with the pretty important but singular notion of how to improve life for Black people in Montgomery at that time. Very focused, very discreet in its orientation and its mission. Certainly not, change American history and American law and make separate but equal, inherently unequal, even as it relates to accommodations, public accommodations. It started small. So as you think about things in your own community, things you want to see changed, improvements you want to see made, I just want you to see that this sort of tracks with what happened back then, that there were things that people in a local community came together and said, nah, we got to change this. We need it can be better, and we can do the work to make it better. Um, um, Montgomery Improvement Association, MIA, as it came to be called, not to be confused with missing in action. It was anything but. When the bus boycotts began that November 5th, um, with the support of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and obviously the local community, the empty buses on that day were such a shock to the system. Nobody expected it. The white folks in the community didn't know what to do. And at the end of that day, the community meeting, the gathering, which were being held nightly in churches, gathered at a local AME church, packed with Black folks there in Montgomery. And at the time, the Black census in Montgomery was around 17,500 people. They gathered and they took the position that they had to continue the bus boycott. So what was initially a one-day event, these folks make the decision when they felt the agency and the power of their actions that, hey, we shook something up. This thing ought to continue. Little did they know that continuation meant 382 days of protest, of resistance, of inconvenience, so that they could bring the system to heal. And I got to imagine that over those many, many days, over that year's time, there were probably a lot of people who eventually said, all right, y'all, this system's too big. We can't break it. And I'm reminded of this poem, the line of the poem, it's when things seem worse that you mustn't quit. A lot of times in our fights, things feel dark. They feel tough. They feel immovable. And quite frankly, it launches its fiercest attack right before it crumbles, right before it falls. And so, yes, in these times of mobilization, we will have high days and low days, but they persisted, and through their persistence and their commitment to the goal, we were able to see American history, not just in Montgomery, but I think world history, and the self-efficacy that Black folks felt that we could decide to do a thing, and that thing can be done even when the power on the other side seems all powerful, and not able to crumble. Where does this relate back to what it is that we're talking about today and what we're confronting? I just want to bring down the size. The civil rights movement takes on such this huge space, as it should. It was transformational for history and for us. Um, a lot of times we refuse to pull back the layers of, okay, how did we get there? What happened to get us to this point? How did they organize it? What did we, who knew Dr. King? If Dr. King doesn't exist in our communities anymore. Well, let the story be told honestly. Dr. King was selected to lead the MIA, Montgomery Improvement Association. He was chosen, according to Rosa Parks, because he was young, relatively new, and frankly hadn't built up a lot of enemies amongst ministers and others in the Montgomery area. And so he was chosen to lead this group, and he after some trepidation, decided that he would take on that mission. But the people made that choice. A group of folks in a community made those choices, and obviously history took its course, and divine intervention being what it is, he was the right person, it was the right time, and they were the right group. But so too is that possibility for all of us. I wanted to give 3 or maybe 4 pieces of advice as we approach what is going to be my series in this SoloPod, which will bring to you individuals through interviews and through conversations like this, movement examples, and curricula that I'm going to borrow from an effort known as START, START, to try to walk us through, okay, what are some of the steps? And hopefully it can be useful to you. Everything may not be useful to you. This may not be useful. You may know this history and it may not be important to you, but hopefully you can keep what is useful and suspend with the rest. All right. I'm humble enough to know that everything won't be directly applicable to everybody. But we trace these examples back over history because they give us the belief that the thing we want to do can be done. And in some cases, the thing we want to do may not have ever been attempted before. Or maybe it was attempted and was unsuccessful. and then you're birthing something very new. But in the time in which you're doing it, you can't be focused on making history or even changing history. They weren't in the Montgomery Improvement Association. They were focused on changing the lived conditions of Black people every day in that city, just like many of us are challenged to do at a local, at a state, or at a national level at this time. Three pieces of advice as we get at this question of what do we do and how do we get started. The START and a number of other organizing movement strategies give us a little bit of hint into how we do that. And the first thing I want to suggest to you is that you begin to assemble a group of people, small group, folks you know, maybe some you don't know so well, but you have a sense that you share something in common. I don't want to give you all the criteria, but certainly there ought to be some like-minded concern amongst your gathering, small group of folks. And by the way, your action doesn't always have to be with groups. It can also be very individual, and we'll talk about that. If not, if we don't get to it this time, next time. But get a small group together. That's number one. Who of people who share generally your issue, your angst, your concern. Talk amongst each other. Number two, in a house setting, at a coffee shop, however it is you decide to organize this group of like-minded people, and allow everyone who's around that space at that table to offer their real, true, heartfelt feelings about what is under their craw, what's concerning them, what has them anxious, nervous, troubled by our community, by the country, by the state, by the local place where we are, on our street, in our neighborhood. That's number two. Allow everybody to get their voices out and be heard. The buy-in is greater when we do that. People feel greater ownership. They feel heard and hopefully reflected through the work of the group when everybody gets to pour in their thoughts and feelings. That's number two. Number three, once you all have gathered, that you have shared your thoughts, opinions, trepidations about what it is you are facing, you all as a group are facing. The third thing that we want you to do is start to read, study, pull some examples, look at some PBS documentaries on some things that may have happened that may give you just some advice on how to start approaching some of the core of the work, which will be the development of an action plan, all of the kinds of tactics and actions that you want to execute on the way to the goal. But the resourcing, just trying to educate yourselves as a group or appoint individuals to help bring the group under some common shared set of resources. And then the fourth, and I think most important thing to do in this early phase is to decide what is this thing then that we want to change? What do we do about it? What do we is it that we want to, like the Montgomery Improvement Association, change the conditions of Black folks in this community on transportation, public accommodations, um, um, busing, other specificities that, of course, we know history and we know that it ballooned to become something much bigger than it originally started. But I got to tell you, I think we would admit that those folks did not gather in that room necessarily believing they were going to change American and world history. In fact, I have paused to anyone who would begin an effort like this with the goal of the history change, frankly, being at the center and not change for the thing, the circumstance, the conditions that have gotten you to the point of frustration or action that you are. But now together in a group of shared, like-minded thinking, you can determine, all right, what do we want to do if we had our druthers, if we were able to decide for ourselves, if we were able to build the outcome and we are the only ones who had input and what that thing was going to be, what would it look like? It feels daunting and unachievable today, but we put some real strategy together, we can make this thing happen. So we want that. We want you to we want you to begin with the goal in mind, the change, the delta, the change that you want to have happen in mind. The absence of doing that allows for your work to be carried off in directions of which you never ever intended and are not consistent with the greater change that you want to see. It allows for every little thing that happens to pierce this body of people and get us distracted and off on different things. For those of you who are sort of faith in my common or shared faith tradition, it's sort of this belief that the devil thrives in chaos. They create chaos. You want to mess some people up and destroy a movement or keep some things from happening amongst a group with shared interests. Give them different languages so that they can't communicate. Some of y'all will know what reference that is to, right? So the chaos is something we've got to deal with. But the central goal, letting folks know, like, man, this is the thing we want to see at the end of the day. And guess what? Providence will take its course. If it's meant to be something different and it aligns with you all in your heart and your core, it'll go that direction in consistent keeping with what brought you together. So it's crystally important, if I could make crystal clear, the importance of that shared goal, that shared outcome. Y'all, I want to move quickly to questions because my intention is to try to keep these within 20, 25 minutes, not to take too much of your time. And by the way, I'm supposed to be on spring break with the kids. So yeah, there's that. So I want to invite my girl, Lolo. Lolo, I don't know you out. Yeah, there you go.
What's up,
Um,
y'all?
well, what's
Welcome
up,
home,
Lolo?
y'all.
Welcome home. Lolo, you got some interesting background. What's up? I like the flowers. Where you at? Last time we got a race car.
All
You
right,
good?
y'all. I am good. I am good. I have some interesting things going on. I'm not gonna say out loud because I'm gonna have
I
Angela
get it. I
texting
get
me.
it. I get it. I get it. I get it. But it's all good. You're gonna be all good. We're counting it, counted and done.
Yes.
Lolo, I don't know if
So
any of that was helpful to you as a listener, but I don't know how you feel on the show because you vet a lot of the questions for the main show. But this is one that often comes up. What do we do? How do we get started? And it feels so ballooning. And I just think it's part our job at this time to bring it down to size so that people feel like they can get a go at it.
yeah, and I'm taking a look at the questions that you have gotten up into this point, and I think it's very poignant to what it is that you're asking or what people have been asking of like, what do we do? So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go through the questions and then I do
Sure.
want to talk this through because you and I have gotten to be activated a lot, over this last week.
Oh
Um
yes.
and seeing the inspiration of people being inspired to do something in that sense.
That's right.
um, so one of the first questions that I see is somebody said, when we call our senators with all of this chaos, is there a few guidelines that we should develop to focus on when we call the Capitol?
Oh yeah.
So
Oh
that's a
yeah.
good question.
It is a good question. And while I'm trying to answer, I want you to pull up that link on the messaging. So, for instance, around Musk, Doge, all that is coming from that other group that you referenced that I'm not saying the name of because, yeah, that gives some talking points for folks when they're doing it. I'll point to just two quick things. So last week, if you missed it, there was this 24-hour heavy content filled with some really joyous moments, but also some real gifts and talents being shared by a lot of the names that you will know and recognize. And we were sort of trying to school people just across the range of issues and ways in which we've got to bring this fight right now, or certainly respond to the fight that we're in. And you can visit. This was the State of the People that I'm referring to, and Lolo, if I'm not mistaken, we have the link to watch it in its
so we
entirety or its
we
or parts.
Actually, all of parts of it will be available to watch on Wednesday.
Okay.
So if you go to stateofthepeople.media, you can put your email in, and we'll actually start sending out a lot of different resources that are available.
Awesome.
You'll be able to see all of the different lives, and then also if you go to State of the People. So it's PPL for people
Okay.
on Instagram. Follow that. We also have some stuff like it inspired so many people to come together.
Agreed.
And they were like, we can't just leave it here. So they have like this whole plan. And we've been planning, have this whole
Yeah.
plan about how to move forward and how to continue this collective action of advocating. So
That's right. That's right. And the collective is really cool, y'all, because it reminds us that we're not in it alone. We got folks that we can lean on when we're not at 100%. We're at 50. Let's just pray that the partner in the group is at 150 to compensate for the 50 that you don't have. But that's what group helps us to do. But there are very clear guidance that we should always have when we're reaching out to people in power and in influence around the thing that we want them to do. The message simply has been around, Doge and the cuts and all of this rabbit, nonsensical action that is happening at the federal level is you are the Congress of the United States. You all are the first branch of government in a co-equal system of three branches. Stand up and do your job. Stop them from what they're doing. Stand in the way. Ask questions. Whatever is, again, the movement's goal at that time. Those need to be the comments in which that we are sharing with our members. Now, I'll tell you, I've been elected and I've been on the receiving end of messages like this. And I got to tell you, it's not every day that a congressman's office blows up with phone calls. And when it does, it is a special thing. And let me tell you this, they take notice. The reason why Republicans have been instructed to stop hosting town hall meetings around the country is because they're getting to hear directly from people and they ain't liking what they're seeing and they're demanding some change. So their leadership said, hey, y'all just stop having the meetings. Well, they can stop having them if they want, but it won't diminish the sentiment. In fact, the sentiment will likely grow stronger, louder, more resilient, and frankly, closer to its aims, achieving its aims. So we want consistent messaging to come out. As an elected, I didn't like the whole threat thing. Like, I put you in, I put you out. I Google your name in the database and you ain't voted in 7 years. So I'm not really terrified that you're going to do that, right? This is just thinking as a person who's like, is this threat real? But if you are a voter and you do this consistently, let them know I am a voter in your area and I don't miss an election. I'm expecting you to be there and to represent me. So that kind of thing. Be clear about the message, the goal that we're trying to achieve. And then in your tactics, again, the threat, make sure if you make it, you backing it up.
I just seen this comment and somebody was like, it would be a great idea for the Dems to start having town halls in the Republican areas where, they've been saying that they're not going to be doing those town halls anymore.
Yeah.
I think that is such a great idea.
I think Dems ought to be doing town halls in their own communities. To be very frank about it, because that's how you awaken this sleeping giant of the majority of people in this country who are eligible and registered to vote, not voting. More than half the country choosing not to participate.
Yeah. And so there was another question that said, how do we begin to get engaged again? I'm in the 92% and burned my cape on 11/06/24. I'm tired and at rest. I don't want to help anyone but us Black folks. Is there a way to move past this intense hurt?
Yeah, it's hard. It is very hard. I sympathize with it. I know on the main show, if it were Tiffany and Angela, they would tell you. In fact, Angela is pretty consistent in saying, I don't even believe the outcome. But, this is where we are. It hurts. It absolutely hurts when you put everything into it. It's one of the reasons why I mentioned in talking about the Montgomery Improvement Association. Do you think on the night of that town hall, Lolo, where they were asked at the end of the day on the first day of the protest when it was wildly successful and the buses were empty, do you think the answer would have still been a resounding yes, I'm going to stick at this if it's going to take us 382 days to get the outcome we want?
Nope.
And my guess is if folks had to meet that challenge of how long I got to do this up front, many of us wouldn't choose to take the first step in the first place. So just know that what you are feeling is real. It is not abnormal. It is very normal during these times. But the way I would caution you to resist is the folding and giving in and let be what will happen, right? The sort of live and let live and carpe diem, whatever happens is what happens. The problem with that, particularly for us, Black folks, people of color, those who sit at the margins of society, is just know that we are always going to be at the worst end of the consequence when these folks are in power. The worst end. They're coming for us. And they may be coming for some others too, but it's going to sweep us out first. And then they'll get to the next thing. And so if the consequence for us not being involved didn't savage us so greatly, I could get with, I'm backing out, I'm tapping out, I
Mhm.
can whatever. But because whether you tap in or out, you're on the front line of the negative side of this, we believe in harm reduction as a strategy as well. And so if you got to do this just to reduce the harm that could be coming your way, let that maybe be motivation. Let, the example of Montgomery 382 be a motivation. And there are probably other examples that we could point to as well, but resist the desire, the urge, the feeling to pull up, pull back, because that's exactly what the enemy wants. The reason why they're deluging us, there's a deluge of bad news every day, and they're moving at the speed that they are, is they want our heads on a swivel. They want us spinning to the point where we feel like we have no recourse. Well, we do. And when they get loudest is when we're piercing them.
Mhm. And can I add real quick,
Please
because you
add,
posted
please.
something on, Joy said this during the 24-hour town hall. She started off and she was like, some people say they don't do politics, but politics is
Well,
always
do
going to
you?
do you. And I really resonated with that. And then
It's
we also
real.
posted Stacey Abrams' post about this is not the time to rest. And I know that there's a lot of people who are tired,
Yeah.
but I am a strong believer that you don't have to exhaust yourself trying to save or build this new Rome in a day.
Yeah.
It's just small things of
Small
people playing
bites.
their part.
Small bites.
Small
Absolutely. I
bites.
agree with you 1,000%. My wife hits me over the head because I say so much. You can't eat an elephant in one bite all at once. No, whatever it is, you can't eat it all at once. You have to
Mhm.
take bites out of it. And the beautiful part about strategy and doing this with a group of people is when you're working your plan, you're kind of immune to all of the noise and the mess because you are working your plan, and you'll get fulfillment from the successes that you achieve along the way to the big goal. So resist that urge. That's not of us. That's a tool of the enemy. So I resist that.
And I want to. I think we got time for one more
Okay.
question.
Okay.
Um, and I'm just going to group a bunch of questions that I'm seeing together.
Okay.
People are mentioning the primary election, special elections coming up, primaries coming up, and so it's like, how do we leverage these things? What do we do? How do we get engaged?
Yeah. So, just a quick mention: there are two primaries coming up very soon in my home state of Florida. Two Republican districts, one of which was previously occupied by Matt Gaetz. Those seats are up, and although they're happening in pretty strongly Republican areas, the other side is very nervous that there's a chance that a Democrat could potentially sweep in and win. And what makes them nervous is when we are showing action and activity on the ground. Y'all, if your people aren't doing what they're supposed to do, and I mean at every level of government, and you all collectively or individually have something to offer that could be better than what you've got, the alternative, then we ought to be running and moving the alternatives to take on many of these seats. Moms for Liberty, a group that has taken over many school boards around the country, certainly in Florida. A lot of these candidates, right wing, extreme folks who want history and Black history and all mentions of anything that could offend white children no longer in textbooks or in assignments or in resources. They are getting on school boards with just slivers of
Mhm.
votes and having all power to
Mhm.
determine what happens to your children and our children at the local, educational level. And by the way, their kids either have been moved out and already in private school, getting subsidized by taxpayers, or are in schools where basically everybody looks the same, and so they'll get little resistance when they try to push things like our history out of libraries and out of textbooks. So the way we engage is we have to fight back. Joy's point, and I appreciate you bringing it up, Lolo. You don't do politics, but it does you. That is a very common refrain. People, I don't talk about politics. It is in every aspect of our lives. The fact that we are even on this forum communicating,
Mhm.
and the regulatory environment makes for it to be available for all of us, doesn't have to be that way. The regulatory environment could be, I got to pay you for everybody who sees me. And for everything that you see, you got to pay for it. And by the way, we're going to limit your ability to have lives like this to 10 minutes. And you got to do what you got to do in that period. And by the way, you can't do it more than once a month.
Yep.
That could become the regulatory environment. Instagram or TikTok. I'm sorry, I'm not on it, so I apologize for the whatever. But the TikTok ban, right? If that were to be enforced, the ban on TikTok operating in the United States means you don't do politics because you're doing your TikTok. But your TikTok can be taken away and now you've got nothing. So those are hopefully some examples that show you in the ways in which it shows up in the most consequential ways, but also in ways that we don't even recognize or think about, but it bears consequence on. So get involved, organize, replace people where necessary, and in other places, elect and elevate some people who are doing what we need them to do.
So I just want to say this last thing. It's not a question. I just want to put this plug.
Please.
Even Andrew didn't know this. On Wednesdays, we're going to start doing this thing on the social media. So you can go to Native Land Pod social media, and we're going to have a question day. So you'll see a post, and it's going to be like, because these, like, unfortunately, we want to have these conversations and have you all ask as many questions as possible, but sometimes we just don't get to them. Yeah. And so on that Wednesday, you'll be able to go post your question, and then we're going to engage right back with you. So make sure that you tag a friend, tells people, but on Wednesday, this is going to be our new thing, okay?
I love that, Lolo. And Lolo, I appreciate your help and wishing you well on that end. And for y'all who tuned in, thank you. We're going to try and keep these as brief as we can because we know time is the currency. It's not replenishable. You don't get more of it. So when you choose to spend it with us, we appreciate it. We value it. And stay tuned to these minis because not minis, Lord, solos. Lolo, y'all got so many names for all these goddamn things y'all have us done. Anyway, the solo pods that we're doing, again, I'm going to deepen into over the coming weeks through interviews and through examples, various stages of organizing, and I will use curricula that you will also be able to access on your side so that we can follow each other along as we try to do what we got to do to build the beloved community. And with that, welcome home, everybody. Welcome home, Lolo.
Welcome home, y'all.
See y'all later.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeart Radio, visit the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.